Not
think
gonna
you'd want to
happen. At
go
least not this
to
year.
Real. No. All right. So thank you all for making the time. We'll try and get this going real snappy. Lou hasn't met y'all yet,
I
so
know.
Lou, I'll let you introduce yourself.
It's
Hello.
like real.
I
Hello.
feel like I've known you guys because I listened to that episode a lot when I was editing it. So I'm familiar with your voices. So it's good to finally get a face to the voice. So hello.
Yes. Hello. I'm so glad we
Because
finally.
of listening to the podcast, obviously.
Well, we're just really, really excited, and we're really glad that you guys would be up to do this. So, I guess, is everyone good? Everyone's recording right now on whatever devices you're on.
Just started.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Okay, so then I guess it's time to do the sync clap. Lou, do you want to do the honors
Yeah.
of syncing us up?
Okay. Is everybody ready?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Hey,
Hey,
you
that's
pretty
actually
close.
cool,
sounded
right?
Pretty
good.
close.
All right, so Lou, how about you be the ringleader today? Lou actually had sort of an agenda for today, and yeah, I'll just turn
Sweet.
it over to him.
So, hello, everybody. Welcome again for another version of OSP Only Does Marvel Movies. So we're
To
very
my
excited
great
to have you
shame.
guys again. I don't know if you guys would like to introduce yourselves again since you are recurring guests. So I don't know who wants to go first.
I'm Jordan or JJ. Um, Jordan Keeble, I guess.
That's it. Hi.
Awesome, perfect. That works. That works. Thank y'all for coming. Good friends of the pod, best friends of the pod at this
Yeah,
Aw,
point.
at this point, yeah.
So yeah, we're
that's
really
friends of the pod.
stoked. Yeah, we're super stoked for this. So yeah, let's just dive in. I finally got to see Avengers Endgame last Friday. I watched it in the drive-in. And so caveat, this is the only way that we are able to sort of see new releases if we are bringing my daughter because we don't really have childcare, right? So this was a bit of a challenge. There's a period in the film where my daughter was losing it, so I had to kind of like walk her outside of the car and rock her to sleep. And
Aw.
so there's a period that I didn't quite get, but for the most part, I was there. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys about it. And then the only bad news is that I still haven't seen Captain Marvel.
Oh, what?
Yeah, and so here's the thing. I was thinking I would get an opportunity to see it in a double feature,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't work out because I don't know if it's like the patriarchy or whatever, but like the minute it came out in the drive-in, it took up two screens. Avengers Endgame took up two screens, and Captain Marvel disappeared entirely from that theater. So I was
Oh,
really upset. It's still showing in a couple of different theaters, so I might have a chance to see it if it sticks around for like another week or so. I am owed some time at work, but unfortunately, yeah, I wasn't able to squeeze it in before this, which sort of wraps around to something I'm gonna bring up later, about the movie. But I guess we can start with sort of like first impressions. How did everyone sort of receive it? When you saw it. I guess we can start with JJ and then we can go to Steph.
I liked it more than I thought I would, to be fair. Um, like I think I mentioned before, like when we did the Captain Marvel pod, that I had been feeling kind of like Marvel fatigue going into this whole like last push of phase 3 or whatever. So like I thought Infinity War was fine. Like I didn't spend those last 20 minutes of Infinity War like sobbing uncontrollably like some people did. Uh, like pretty much as soon as like all of the Guardians of the Galaxy like turned to dust, I was like, okay, cool. But yeah, like I really liked Endgame. I think somebody summed it up for me recently as like it's a bunch of moments kind of tied together, and like that is true. It was kind of a bunch of moments, but I did really like kind of how it ended, and I liked how like basically like they killed Thanos in the very beginning and then grappled with like, okay, well, what do we do now that we did this thing?
Mm.
You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
I thought that was really interesting, especially like showing how all of the characters were like grieving in their own way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I basically liked it a lot more than I expected to.
Very cool. Steph?
I had high hopes for it. I thought it was okay. I thought it was pretty good. Um, I have some issues with the end, which I guess we'll get to when we get to
Hmm.
it, you know. But for a send off for those like the OG Avengers, I thought it was pretty good. I am just more looking forward to going forward the more recent Avengers. I'm interested in their stories now. So
Yeah.
it's kind of Endgame. I was just like, I'm glad. I'm glad. This is fine. It's done. I'm glad. And I have a
Yeah.
lot. We'll get into
Very cool. Very cool. All right, Lou?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it quite a bit, honestly, and I think going into it, I kind of knew where it was going. It was supposed to be just, especially how the writers and the directors kept like pushing it, like this is the culmination of all 22 movies, and this is the grand finale. And so I really, really enjoyed it as like the series finale of like this movie arc or whatever. So watching it in that context, I really, really enjoyed it because it's such a big feat to kind of do in the first place because like, it hasn't been done before. So the fact that it works alone is like crazy to me. But you know, I did have some issues with some parts of the movie, but overall, I'm super impressed with like the level, the quality of writing. I'm not exactly like super thrilled with everything that happened, but I'm for the majority of like the arcs and the characters and all that stuff. I quite enjoyed it. So you know, it's yeah, I really really liked it. So I don't know about you, AJ.
Well, so I really did like it. I'm probably right around where JJ is in that I was really going into this a little bit weary of the entire sort of like franchise. I think I've made it clear that I'm not really the biggest Avengers fan. Like I love sort of the individual stories of the Avengers more than the huge team ups. And in particular, I genuinely hated Age of Ultron, and I think that probably colored how much like um, how much I've sort of been averse to the Avengers in general. So that's probably a little unfair. And so Endgame went a real long way, in my opinion, to sort of like fix that for me because it was a much more cohesive film. And it gave a lot of space to the characters, which is usually the thing that I complain of the most, which is like, even, I mean, like, Age of Ultron was what, 2.5 hours? Like, even with 2.5 hours, it felt like we didn't spend enough time with anyone in that film. And then like the fact that, and I'm probably still a little bit salty that the third Captain America movie was basically an Avengers 2.5. So like that really upset me too because Cap was like my favorite of the OG Avengers. And so I was really looking forward to sort of where his story was going to go next. And it felt like that soap opera thing where you kind of move the one person's narrative an inch in that movie, and it felt like we didn't get enough for me.
Yeah.
And so like, like when we are getting to sort of Infinity War in this, I was like unsure about how I felt, but I thought it really held together. Now there are a lot, or there, I shouldn't say there are a lot of things, but there are a few things that really stood out to me that did not work. And we'll get to that because I know Steph's got some things, and I'm really excited to hear what she's got to say on what didn't. But before we do that, I guess to sort of stick with the positivity, my big thing that really worked in the film, and then we can go back around sort of see what worked for everyone else. My biggest takeaway from the film, and the thing that I thought I really enjoyed was the fact that maybe it is that we need to expect a 3 hour Avengers film every time, but this felt like we actually spent enough time with each of the characters, like that it felt like the emotional investment was good. You know, we got good arcs for everyone, which was interesting to me. Um, or I should say, developed arcs for just about everyone, which was interesting to me. And then I also felt that uh, there was always going to be a question about how they were going to manage the stakes because we knew that you know, Spider-Man was coming back because Spider-Man Far From Home was already planned and the trailer had already dropped. So like we knew he was going to come back, and so we knew that a great majority of these characters that had been snapped out were going to be brought back in. The stakes weren't necessarily how are they going to defeat Thanos, but how are they going to make us sort of invested in the group, even though we already know more or less the outcome, right? And
Right.
so I thought that they delivered on that big time, and that's sort of a testament to the story writing. So that's what worked for me. Steph, do you want to sort of give us what worked for you?
Yeah, I mean, I really liked Tony's story arc in particular. I think his ending
Mm-hmm.
was extremely fitting. Um, I liked everything that happened with him, the daughter, and like that. I think of everything, that was the part that made me the most emotional. Like I expected to cry a lot. I'm a crier, but that was really the only time I honestly cried was when hologram Tony was talking to his daughter. That really got me. And I also just like, you know, you have to think before the movie came out. It was like, what could they possibly do? How could they possibly end all of these movies? And I thought the great fan service of just like going through the greatest hits of the stuff that happened in the past, just is like a reminder of like, this is why you loved us. You know, these are the movies. Remember Avengers, remember Loki, remember all this. And
Yeah.
it was just like fan service in the best way of just like a walkthrough of everything that came before. It was an ingenious way to end it, I think, because it reminds you of what came before, why you liked it so much, and it also makes sense that that's how they would figure out to make it fixed, I guess. Yeah, so that didn't come out coherently, but you know what I mean. That was
No.
a good way to end it, a good way to solve the problem that they'd set up.
Oh, makes
Yeah,
sense.
so that was
Perfect. Lou?
You know, with all these Avengers films, I think whenever AJ and I talked about them, it was always like AJ wanted to see more of those character moments in a lot of the Avengers movies. They don't really focus on that. I mean, Joss Whedon started doing that in the beginning, but even that was very like watered down. So like I was super excited to see that in this movie, that they did focus on the relationships that they built in the last 10 years. You know, especially with like characters like you know, Natasha and you know, in Captain America. Those type of dynamics I really enjoyed. I like the fact that they'd have a lot of like quieter moments. I like, you know, even in these movies when they have those type of moments, I think it really elevates a film. Because especially with comic book films, I think sometimes it's very easy to dismiss them and be like, it's just, you know, it's a spectacle and it's all punch and kick and superpowers. But I really like those, you know, those human moments that they have, and I feel like this movie really tried to focus on that as much as was an ending to the whole thing. I enjoyed the fact that they brought those elements into the movie, and you know, I did like all those, you know, the big, you know, cinematic moments that they have that kind of look like they're comic book panels, but it was those quieter moments that I really enjoyed, and I think they did better than they did from with the last movie in particular, which was, you know, Infinity War.
Yeah. All right, JJ?
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I didn't even see Age of Ultron. So
Good.
well, like that's the thing. Like you know, I really liked Avengers, and then Age of Ultron came out, and like nobody liked it. So I just never got around to seeing it. And it's like it turns out to be the right decision, apparently. But yeah, like I agree. I felt like we finally had enough time to be with these characters in the way that we've always wanted to be, like when they're teamed up. Um, and that kind of goes back to what I was saying in the beginning about like getting to see these characters grieve, because it's not a thing that we've ever really gotten to see these characters go through. And like in terms of like speaking to that in terms of storylines that I really enjoyed, I really liked Thor's. I thought Thor's journey throughout the whole movie was fantastic. like his storyline was probably my favorite. And just because he like, I mean, he'd gone through so much character development through the course of his own series, you know, like starting out as kind of as like the arrogant demi Norse people, you know, whatever, of Asgard, you know, and then seeing him like be humbled and want to do more for Midgardians, and then like do more for his brother who had obviously been like ostracized, and then seeing him grieve for the decision that he made to kill Thanos, like, and regretting that decision because it didn't help them in any way. And you know, like basically seeing his character arc, I thought that was really like incredible, and that he got the chance to feel that redemption like by getting his hammer back, you know. I think that was my favorite part, because like you just you actually got to see how much this character in particular had changed, and very much in the same way as Tony Stark. Like when you think about who he was in the very beginning, you know, the kind of, you know, the playboy blah blah blah, like, and see him finally settle down and to like actually shirk like the Avengers stuff. Like, no, I have what I want. I have my wife. I have a kid. I have a house in the middle of nowhere. I have like peace for once, and I want to protect that. Like you actually feel for him. Like you understand why he's making these choices. And I thought that like they did a really really good job of doing that for pretty much every character. Like I think Hawkeye is the only one that I was like, really? But yeah, I thought that this did a really good job of like paying off who these characters are now after, you know, the past 11 years that we've gotten to know them.
I agree. I like that. Okay, so why don't we then, I guess this is the fun, the spicy part of the conversation. What didn't work? I know Steph had a lot. Let's go Steph, JJ, Lou, then me, I guess. So Steph, you wanna kick it off?
Okay. Doctor Who is my favorite television show. I love space stuff. I couldn't wrap my head around what in the hell happened at the end of that movie. Like, you took Thanos out of 2014 and brought him to 2019. So was he still there to do all of the stuff that he did after? Loki's gone, so was he still in Thor Ragnarok? I'm trying to even say it. And they pay lip service. Like if you mess up, is rips in the timeline, but they never say that they did that. So it kind of just seems like everything is okay, but literally everything's different. Gamora's running around having never met the Guardians of the Galaxy. What, like, one that's like, if wrap my head around it a little, I'd be like, okay, fine, whatever, you just roll with it. Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, it's fine. So that's my one minor, like, well, you could, my big thing. Steve Rogers would never go back into the past and not try to help his friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like he's married to Peggy, and she says, "Oh my gosh, did you see that Howard Stark got murdered?" And he goes, "Oh, classic Buck." Because seriously, he would never. He was around. He was not. It was anti, and it drove me nuts that they implied that he would go back to 1940 whatever and just let his best friend be tortured, let his other friends be killed, let Hydra take over, and all the things that he thinks that he knows are going to happen, he just let them happen. I did not believe it for 1 second. Also, give Natasha a funeral. Come on.
Yes.
Tony Stark gets a funeral.
Yes.
Where's Natasha's funeral?
Oh,
okay, that's
yeah.
it. I'm done.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Thank you. Okay, JJ.
Um, I agree. I think there is something to be said that we can potentially assume that Steve did do those things, like we just didn't see them. Like that he still got his life with Peggy. Did he say he didn't do these things?
And our timeline would be different. Like
Yeah.
Hydra would.
But okay, so here's my I guess just to jump in really quick.
Yes.
You indicated that they paid lip service to this, and that's the part that bothers me the most, is
Okay.
that they wrote in this sort of MacGuffin that was like, hey, this isn't gonna work. Like time doesn't work the way you think it works. And then that was it. That's how we're supposed to just sort of process everything.
Right.
But then the rules of time jump around for the rest of the movie. And then what you realize is, oh, that was them just saying, this is all nuts. Just go with
Once
it.
we put the time stones back, you're supposed to forget every other like inconsistency.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that was it. Like have Steve put the time stones back, and then you're supposed to just think now everything's fine. But Thanos is running around in the wrong time, or
Right.
got murdered in the wrong time before he could
Right.
do any of the things that he did.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't, JJ. Problem.
Your complaints make sense. Now,
I know,
to be fair, I really didn't think that deeply about it, like because I kind of knew that if I did, it would fall apart. So I just kind of was like, it's a very pretty bubble right now, and I don't want to pop it.
Yeah, that was probably the best decision. And I like I said, I roll with time travel all the time. So
Yeah.
it's not like I'm a literal, like I have to know A, B, and C exactly how these things happen. But it was just, it seems so egregious to me that they didn't even pretend to like, oh, now they have amnesia. So everyone forgot that what, or, I don't know, however they make it work and things like this, but they didn't even try.
It definitely felt like it was written by people who had only watched like Back to the Future as their time travel like information. Like they definitely have never watched Doctor Who. Because I feel like if they had watched Doctor Who, they would have like been a little more thorough with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why it's frustrating, is because like people like you and I, fans of Doctor Who, like we know that like it's that way.
You and me can time travel, JJ. Okay.
We know how time travel works. Yeah. So
Oh man.
I agree. I feel like a lot of the time travel stuff was kind of was very wibbly wobbly and like not as well thought through. I did like the idea of it, like, and I liked that was kind of how they had used it, rather than like just rather than like everybody just being stuck in the quantum realm or whatever. But yeah, I feel like that was probably my only gripe, was that the time travel was too wishy-washy.
Sorry, and the funny thing about that whole thing is, I was telling AJ the other day that the directors and the writers seem to have very different visions of how time travel works, because the Russos are like, oh yeah, when he went back, it was an alternate timeline. So in that case, it kind of fits. Like, oh yeah, he probably did something, in that timeline where like things happen differently. But if they go with the way that the writers are talking about, they're like, oh yeah, it's the same timeline, and it just things happen in Steve happens to be alive during the the 40s or 60s or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm also confused with that element. I thought that was going to be one of my favorite elements of the movie, because I kind of knew that that's where they were heading towards. I really love Back to the Future in its concept, so I thought, oh, it's going to be great. But that was kind of like the weaker parts of the movie for me, to, So
Yeah.
I kind of agree with that sentiment.
All right, Lou, anything else for you with what didn't work? Or
I think, someone who kind of follows marketing materials with like for these big movies, I think one of the poorly written characters in this was Hawkeye. And there was a lot of elements in that arc that kind of bugged me, especially with the whole sacrifice of Black Widow towards the end. It felt kind of like not as thought out, and I don't know, that just kind of bugged me a little bit because he was basically a murderer for you. You assume that he's a murderer, and they implied it very heavily. I
Yep.
think they could have really
Yep.
done a lot with that character, or with the the he's Ronin now, so they could have really done something different. Maybe like, I don't know. I'm not a writer. I don't know, but what they did, what they come up with, I did not enjoy as much. Especially with it was like just more like, well, we got everybody back, so now he's probably not a murderer. So there we go. So that wasn't my favorite element of it. I kind of wish that they would have kept using Black Widow, because I think like she was better written as the movies went along. So I was hoping I would see where that was going. When she was like kind of heading like the newer Avengers in the beginning of the movie, I thought she was probably like the head of Shield, which I would have really enjoyed her, if that was like what they were going for. So I was hoping they would explore that a little bit more, because starting with both Steve and Natasha, I think those were the ones I was kind of hoping to see more of. And we got a lot of Steve, but not a lot of Natasha after at the second half of the movie. So that was kind of a bummer for me.
Yeah, that was. Oh, go ahead, JJ.
Oh, I will say, like, speaking about Black Widow, I think the one like really really and it's a really little thing, but after Black Widow sacrificed herself so that the male Avengers could do the actual work in beating Thanos, and then in the big battle they had that one shot of all of the other female Marvel heroes like, don't worry, she has help. Like, just to make you forget that they fridged the one female Avenger. Like, okay, I saw that and I was like, I see what you're doing here. I don't like it.
It was also they did the exact same thing in Infinity War, though. They had that same moment where it was Okoye and Scarlet Witch and Natasha, right? And they all come together to fight. I think actually the female bad guy in that movie.
And when Wanda comes down and Okoye is like, what was she doing up there?
Right. Yeah, but it's the exact same beat, except there's just more of them in Endgame.
It's just like it's like Marvel just like continues to prove that they don't understand what women are doing there.
Yeah.
So,
although I will say that Pepper showing up at the end
in
that armor was great. Yeah, that was great.
I would have been really mad if she didn't show up. Like,
I hadn't even been thinking about it. I'd forgotten that she'd gotten the armor, and that was I was excited. That was great.
I actually forgot that she had the armor too, and so I was really confused as to who that was, because again, I was at the drive-in and like the lighting wasn't the greatest, so I was like really confused for a minute. And then I was also, so this sort of goes up against the thing that kind of bothered me. I didn't get enough Captain Marvel, and so like after our discussion last time, I was really looking forward to sort of seeing, as JJ so eloquently put it, Captain Marvel fuck up Thanos' shit. And so I was like really, really, really excited to see. And okay, so like we did kind of see that, right? She was clearly the strongest Avenger, the only one who was able to sort of take on Thanos 1-to-1. Like in the whole movie, the only person. That was really dope. But like that was really kind of all we got. And I was thinking we were going to see sort of her in her full brilliance, because at this point it's been what, 30 40 years. Well, I mean, of her being Captain Marvel, right? So like now she should have explored or does know all of her powers. So this isn't going to be one of those things where it's like she's still unsure of herself as a superhero. And obviously that kind of showed in the way she confronted Thanos, but I was thinking we'd see sort of her entirely, like just in her full glory. I really think that they wasted Natasha. It feels like they wasted her in the entire series, if we're being honest, like, because like we missed a golden opportunity, and then the moment that you put her in a spot to sort of like shine, she does, and then you axe her for a murderer. Like, she's now a footnote in the redemption arc of a guy that, I mean, I don't think we were given enough to feel invested in his redemption, right?
Well, he wasn't in nearly as many movies as she was. That's
right. Yeah. And so like that, and then that's that. And then the last thing is directly tied to Ronan. I understand that he exists in the comic books. That's fine. But my thing was, if we were already going to be served the ancient one, which for me is problematic as presented, did we really need to see Ronin in sort of pseudo ninja garb in Tokyo, last samuraiing his way through like a bunch of folks? Like that just didn't feel
Yeah.
like the most apt decision, or
Mhm.
the most like culturally sensitive decision at all. And so it was like, it felt like after all the backlash, and you knew that we're already going to have Ancient One sort of involved, like to feed us this version of Hawkeye felt really, really gross, you know. And so I was just kind of, I was really disappointed in sort of that, and that was the part that like just made me go blah. And I mean, like, I get it, like people were really invested in him because it was like, oh, he lost his family, and I saw that in a few places on Twitter, like, wow, you know, the Russos really figured out how to get me to be very invested in Hawkeye, who was like in like none of the movies, you know.
Right.
But it didn't work for me because of that. And I was just like, and then I was like, wait, Natasha's really going to sacrifice herself? Oh my gosh, this is the worst. So yeah, I those are the pieces that didn't work for me. So yeah. And I
I
know that
have
we're
to say though, I'm gonna give a controversial opinion, which
Mhm.
is that I really loved that fight scene between
Oh,
Natasha and Hawkeye. Like when they're fighting over who's
yeah.
going to sacrifice themselves. I really love that scene, and I think it's because I'd forgotten how much I liked their friendship in the
Mm,
first few movies, because
Mhm.
he
mhm.
hasn't been back, and obviously there's more focus on her with Captain America and even Nick Fury as the movies have progressed. So I forgot that they were like best friends, that they were partners, that they'd worked
Yeah.
together. And by the end, they were like the only thing that each other had left, you know? And so,
Yeah.
and it's coincidental, I guess, that they loved each other and they had to go to this place where you had to sacrifice something you loved. Like, what if they hated each other? Um, but yeah, but I think it was really, it worked really well for me. I didn't want Natasha to die. I wished it had been Hawkeye, because I think that was the natural like progression of what he was doing. I mean, he turned into a vigilante killer,
Mhm.
but then he wouldn't have gotten the happy ending of seeing his family again, which is, I guess, what they wanted. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but yeah, I thought, and actually, these movies reminded me. This movie in particular reminded me of all the different relationships that have happened over the course of these 10 years and all these
Mhm.
movies. You know, I forgot the way that some characters interacted with each other, that I was reminded of, like Tony and Spider-Man. And
Mhm.
yeah, you see the, like, I don't know. And I guess Natasha and Hawkeye were my other example of that. But you get to see, like, oh yeah, they've done such a good job of creating this world that feels lived in. Like, all these
Mhm.
characters feel like they know
Mhm.
each other. They feel like they have history with each other,
Yeah.
and you can put two in a room together, and it makes sense. You're like, oh yeah, they connected in this way, and they were together and they fought against this, and it gives it a lot of I think added depth, that they've took so long to set all of these up, so that
Yeah.
there was a real payoff at the end with all these like tiny moments
Yeah.
of character beats.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, Steph. That's a great observation there. Okay, so I know that we're coming to the end here. We're about to lose folks. So let me just ask everyone the final question, which is, what's bringing you joy this week? I have a feeling that I know what both JJ and Steph are going to say. Um, doesn't
Joy.
matter who starts. You two just lay it on us. What's bringing you guys joy?
Steph.
Um, Liverpool Football Club brings me joy.
Hey.
Uh, we are going to the Champions League final. I don't know if you know. I'm
Hmm.
gonna guess that a lot of people listening to this podcast
That is how we know by
familiar with
now.
that fact. So yeah, a lot of joy. If you want to know what I'm interested in that's not bringing me joy, the answer would be Game of Thrones.
But
It's not bringing me joy, but it is taking up a lot of my mental space right now, so I'd have to include it.
are you guys gonna do a Game of Thrones episode?
You know, I've thought about it. Lou has never watched, right?
You know what we should do? We should just watch the last episode and
Try to guess what's happening.
Yeah.
Yes.
think
Yeah, I
that's
guess
the way
what
to
we
go.
could do, we've played around with the idea of doing sort of like a weird version of Mystery Science Theater where like we watch something and then it'll be the commentary. So maybe what we'll choose to do is the final episode of
Why don't you do that with
Game
the
of
Harry Potter
Thrones.
movie, AJ?
We will likely do that too, JJ. I was hoping I'd escape some Harry Potter roasting today, but yes, we will probably do that too. We're actually thinking we put it to the listeners to vote on at some point.
Then I throw in an explain Game of Thrones to Lou and AJ.
Yeah,
Explain Game of Thrones to Lou and AJ like they're your grandparents.
Yeah.
There you go.
Tell
So
it to
who's
me
Game
like
of
I'm
Thrones?
5. It's just like the game of life. Yes. Okay. So JJ, let us know what's bringing you joy.
I think it's also Liverpool Football Club,
Hey.
and that we're going to Madrid. I will admit I was slightly disappointed on Sunday, just because like it's hard not to be. But I think they are still really bringing me joy, even as the FA and the Premier League try to take that from us.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But the fact that we're going to the Champions League final and, unfortunately, well, I guess it's kind of a wash, but if City win the FA Cup, then that means we're going to play for the Charity Shield in August.
That's interesting.
So basically whoever plays for the Charity Shield is like the winner of the league and the winner of the FA Cup.
Right, yeah, so
obviously,
they'd be both.
If that's the same team, they can't play each other. So the winner of the FA Cup then plays the runner-up of the league.
Oh, how neat. Okay.
So we have to play City again?
Yeah, so we have to play City again. And especially
which I'd be fine with.
In August, but for the first time I feel really, really good about the Champions League game because it's fucking Spurs.
Don't. I can't.
I'm still really nervous about it.
Really?
I'm still very, very nervous.
I'm really
Well,
nervous.
it's just like I get that it's oh so Spursy, but I actually have a really good friend who's a Spurs fan, and so this is like the one moment I think in our relationship where he would actually be able to lord anything over me soccer wise, and that's filling me with a lot of like real dread for some reason. So
we're also like 70-30 favorites to win though, we've been there before. Like we've beaten Spurs twice this year, not to mention they're worse when Harry Kane is playing. And like they just announced that the ref is the one that gave us the 1-0 win over Napoli. So, I feel like there's a lot of stuff going in our favor, and especially, we have plenty of time for Bobby to get fit again. I actually feel really good about it. Like if there's any team that we can actually well and truly stomp, it's fucking Spurs.
Well, I think that's the part. That's the bit that like is maybe like making me feel the best about it is the fact that we've got a shot at getting Bobby completely healthy. We get that, then we're good.
And Shayna will probably be on the bench.
Oh man, I'm so excited.
I know.
All right, well, I'm gonna let y'all go. I know it's late. Steph, you made such a sacrifice. Thank you. And then I know JJ, you've got work to do.
All right, I got work to go to.
Yes, so thank you both so much. We really appreciate you taking the time. Lou is verklempt right now with emotion and gratitude. Yes, you can't tell.
No.
He's very
a very good poker face.
So thank you guys so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Of course. Thank you for having us. I love taking time for this.
Yes, and we hope to have you on soon again, probably to explain Game of Thrones to me and Luke.
Oh my God, I can't wait. I can't wait.
All right. Well, y'all have a good night. We'll catch you later.
All right. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.